Hare Krishna and welcome to tonight's reading. We finished Venu Gita and now I'm going to read from Paraye Ham. Krishna says to the gopis, I am unable to repay you. So this is Krishna in Vrindavan, Volume 2 by His Holiness Shiva Ram Swami. And I'm going to start here a little bit into the introduction so that we can get into it quicker. But I was reading this and I really liked it because it's talking about who can read this book and the qualifications for entering into listening to Radha and Krishna Leela and the benefits that we get from it, because that's what this book is all about. It's Radha and Krishna Leela. So he says here, I'm reading from page 7, if anyone happens to have the book with them. In the same way, he's saying that the same rain, which falls equally everywhere, creates different pearls of different sizes, colors, and textures, depending on whether it falls on an oyster or a cobra or an elephant or a bamboo. So apparently these different objects make pearls when rain falls on them during specific stellar constellations. So he says, in the same way, hearing of Sri Krishna's love inspires the beginning to learn of prema, nourishes the adept sadhaka's blossoming affection, and brings ultimate relish to the perfected devotees. So if somebody's a new devotee and they hear about Radha and Krishna Leela, and they hear about Krishna's love for the gopis, then it inspires them to want to know more, to understand more, to becomes an impetus to advance in devotional services so we can access these things. And for someone who's a little more advanced, who has some affection for Krishna, then it nourishes that affection and it helps that affection to become more focused and to take shape. And someone who's a pure devotee, then they just relish it. They just become very blissful by hearing. Thus, hearing of Sri Krishna's love is good for our mood of devotion. It will inspire us. So wherever we're at in spiritual life, we can hear. We have heard that Sri Krishna's loving dealings inspires Vaishnavas to higher stages of devotion. Are there parameters that govern how and when that hearing should take place? Now he's speaking in the first person. I quote below the edited version of a lecture given by Srila Prabhupada on March 14th, 1974. This was in Vrindavan. His Divine Grace clearly outlined the technique of hearing of Sri Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. So this is a quote from Srila Prabhupada. It's quite long, but it's very good. Prabhupada says, real love is to love Krishna. That is the highest philosophy of life, the highest perfection of life, how to learn to love Krishna. Vrindavan means simply loving Krishna. The cowherd boys, the gopis, Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda Mai, Radharani, their only focus is to love Krishna. That's all. That is Vrindavan. Vrindavan does not mean a city or town. Vrindavan means where everyone is in love, in intense love with Krishna. Now you have come to Vrindavan. Try to learn how to intensely love Krishna. That is the perfection of life. And that is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's contribution. So Vrindavan Dham is uppercut Dham. Those who are attached to Vishaya, sense gratification, they cannot see what is Vrindavan. They cannot understand what is Krishna and Radha. Therefore Narottam Das Thakur sings, Vishaya Chariya Kabe Juta Man Kabe Hamahera Boshri Vrindavan. Vishaya Chariya means one who detests this material enjoyment. Such people can see what is Vrindavan. Those who are attached to material enjoyment, they cannot see what is Vrindavan. This is the process. Rupa Raghunatha Pade Haive Akuti Kabe Hama Bhuja Bose Yugala Piditi. We should not try to understand Krishna's love with the gopis all of a sudden. It is very confidential. It is meant for the Paramahamsas to understand. Let us understand Krishna first of all. Of course, that is the aim, the higher understanding of Krishna. Gopi Bhava Rasam Ritati Lahari Kalola Magno. But not all of a sudden. Try to understand Krishna first. Therefore, Vyasadeva has compiled Srimad Bhagavatam. There are 9 cantos to understand Krishna, beginning from the first canto, first chapter, first verse. That is Vedanta philosophy. Then he begins to write about Krishna and Krishna's activities in the 10th canto. One has to understand Krishna by studying 9 cantos. If he tries to understand Krishna from the 10th canto only, he will think, Krishna is like us, a young boy, and he's after so many young girls. So let us imitate. No, that is not understanding Krishna. Krishna must be understood, and then if you follow the footsteps of the acharyas, you'll be able to understand what are the loving affairs between Krishna and Radharani. Don't try to understand all of a sudden, like ordinary boy and girl making their loving affairs. Then you'll fall down. So this is my request. You have come to Vrindavan. Try to understand what is Vrindavan Dham, what is Radha Krishna, but very cautiously, very carefully. Then Krishna will be pleased. And Krishna himself, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is present here. Go through him. In this way, gradually, you'll be able to understand. But that is the highest perfection. Some way or other, if you can understand Krishna and Vrindavan are non-different, they are one. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. As he is worshipable, his Dham is also worshipable. We should not commit any offense in the Dham, and we should follow the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then we'll be favored by the grace of Krishna to understand him and his pastimes with Radharani. So it's important that we go through Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now Shivaram Swami summarizes this. From Srila Prabhupada's wonderful instructions, I have summarized the following main points. 1. The perfection of life is to love Krishna. 2. To understand love of Krishna is not for Vishayis, those attached to sense gratification, for they think Radha, Krishna, an ordinary boy and girl. They will fall down. 3. Those who have given up all Vishaya can understand love of Krishna. To raise Vishayis to Vishaya Chariya, they must be purified by knowledge of Krishna, and this is the purpose of the first 9 cantos of the Bhagavatam. Once one is purified in hearing the Bhagavatam, one will understand that Vraj is as worshipable as Krishna, and then one may enter into his Leela in the 10th canto. This is the process to understand Radha Krishna's love carefully, and it is pleasing to Krishna. Keeping Lord Chaitanya and his teachings in the forefront, one should avoid offenses to Vraj. And the last one is number 7. By Krishna's, Lord Chaitanya's favor, one will then be able to understand Radha Krishna's love. This book is meant to contribute to what Srila Prabhupada calls the careful method to understand Radha and Krishna. Devotees who have not studied Bhagavad Gita, who have not understood the first 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, and who maintain a deeply rooted attachment for sense gratification, should not read this book without further guidance. By that, I mean without the guidance of their spiritual master or qualified senior devotees. All right, so anybody out there who's listening, who still has deeply rooted attachment for sense gratification, then you better turn off the live stream, turn off the video. This book contains nothing explicit or intimate about Radha Krishna's loving pastimes. In fact, where such descriptions appear in Shastra or in the writings of acharyas, I have, true to the editorial policy of the Krishna in Vrindavan series, edited them out. But Paraye Ham does contain constant discussion of Krishna and the gopis. For one too disturbed by sex desire, constant hearing of Krishna's exchanges with the gopis is not recommended. We should proceed, but as Srila Prabhupada instructed, carefully. Now this section is called More on Hearing Radha Krishna Leela. What does it mean to be careful? Srila Prabhupada has given some parameters listed above. Now I would like to further clarify the meaning of carefully understanding Radha Krishna's love. There is often controversy among Vaishnavas whether they should hear the pastimes of Radha Krishna, and if so, how. Certainly such deliberation among thoughtful devotees is beneficial, for it furthers a proper understanding of how to progress towards our goal. One reference at the heart of this argument is the famous verse found in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33-39. The translation is, He who faithfully hears about the dealings between Lord Krishna and the gopis in the rasa dance, and he who describes these activities, attain to the perfectional stage of devotional service, and simultaneously lose material lusty desires. Many acharyas have given their valuable commentary on this shloka. For our purposes, Srila Prabhupada's explanation will be conclusive. I have begun my analysis with the above statement because some non-ISKCON sources interpret this verse too liberally. In their opinion, faith in the spiritual nature of Sri Krishna's Rasa Leela pastimes is the only qualification to hear them. I shall briefly examine a few of Srila Prabhupada's comments on this verse and show that an unqualified acceptance of the word faith will not lead to careful hearing. The Shraddha spoken of in this verse should be based upon a full understanding of Sri Krishna, Krishna Tattva, devotional service, Bhakti Tattva, and the mellows of devotion, Rasa Tattva. Such knowledgeable faith will support the measured hearing of Radha Krishna Leela. So this is part of careful hearing, is that we need to understand Krishna Tattva, Bhakti Tattva, and Rasa Tattva. The most restrictive explanation of this shloka is found in the purport to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 8:255. Therein, Srila Prabhupada warns that only liberated souls should hear Radha Krishna Leela. As for conditioned souls, they should not even try to remember such things. Did Prabhupada leave any room for non-liberated souls to indulge in hearing Radha Krishna Leela? Not in this purport. He says, when one rises to the platform of spontaneous attraction for Krishna, then and only then should one hear about Radha Krishna Leela. This instruction appears definitive and conclusive, were it not for two qualifying factors. The first qualifying factor, which I shall enumerate upon in detail below, is that Srila Prabhupada gave different explanations of this verse and various comments on the same subject in his teachings. The second qualifying factor, which stands as supporting evidence, is that Srila Prabhupada ordered a mass, unqualified distribution of Krishna book and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Both these books contain Radha Krishna Leela, the latter being replete with moderately confidential pastimes, and both were purchased and read by non-liberated souls. Why would Srila Prabhupada direct his followers in this way if he thought that only liberated souls should hear Krishna Leela? These two qualifiers indicate a solid basis for research of Srila Prabhupada's comments upon this verse, beyond the important purport quoted above. I shall now cite several other examples from Srila Prabhupada to lend weight to the argument that Radha Krishna's pastimes can be heard by non-liberated souls, provided they do so carefully. Commenting on the Vikriditam shloka in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada writes, the activities of the gopis and Lord Krishna, if seriously understood, will certainly free one from material attachment, lust. The word seriously closely echoes the quote cited earlier, wherein Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna Leela should be carefully understood. Srila Prabhupada's words, Srila Prabhupada's words, where he says, certainly free one from material attachment, lust, indicate that he's referring to non-liberated souls, the point being that serious devotees, although still conditioned, are permitted to hear Sri Krishna's Rasa Leela. Yeah, because this is implying that people who have material attachment or have lust should hear, because by hearing they get free from material attachment and lust. But they have to hear seriously. This assumption is confirmed in another lecture. Srila Prabhupada again says, one who is actually qualified to hear about rasa, the material disease, kama, lusty desire, will be finished. No more. Very soon he will be dhira. And bhaktim param bhagavati pratilabhya kama vidrogam asva hinotyachira dhiraha. No more kama. Srila Prabhupada reiterates that a qualified hearer may not be dhira and may also possess kama, indicators of a conditioned soul. From these statements, it appears that conditioned souls may also possess qualification to hear Radha Krishna Leela. If they do, the result will be no more kama, and they will soon be dhira. In the previous section, I mentioned Srila Prabhupada's emphasis that Radha Krishna's pastimes are not for Vishayis, and in the last quotes above, he says hearing can purify those who have Vishaya. Are these contradictory statements? Not at all. A Vishayi thrives on sense enjoyment, Vishaya, but a devotee, despite possessing the urge for sense enjoyment, Vishaya, as a consequence of past bad habits, is simultaneously desirous of purifying himself from its effects. He is therefore not a Vishayi. His qualification is the strong desire to achieve the state of Vishayacharya, freedom from lust. So, yeah, the difference is that a Vishayi has lust and wants to fulfill the lust. And a devotee may have lust, but he wants to get rid of the lust. So a person who may have lust but wants to get rid of lust and wants to be a pure devotee, then they're qualified to hear Radha Krishna Lila. This understanding is also supported by the all-important Anya Bilashita shloka that states, those free of any motive other than pleasing Krishna, including the desire for Vishaya, are on the path of pure devotion. This path of pure devotion is the preliminary equivalent of Vishaya Chariya and the basic qualification by which, even though not liberated, one may hear Rasa Lila. Yeah, so somebody may have some material desires, but their motivation for hearing Radha and Krishna Lila is not to, satisfy their material desires. It's to please Krishna. What practical evidence supports this argument? The logic of phalena parichiyate, judge a tree by its fruit, can be used to evaluate a person's qualification. If a conditioned soul is qualified to hear Radha Krishna Lila, upon doing so, he will become free from lust and reject his passionate ways. Being further purified, he will be qualified to enter deeper into Sri Krishna's pastimes. On the other hand, if the hearer of Krishna's pastimes has priorities other than purification, if he has an urgent agenda of material desires, the necessary qualification for hearing is lacking. The conspicuous absence of qualification will be confirmed by ongoing indulgence in sensuality, a mundane perception of Krishna's Leela, and inevitable degradation. As Srila Prabhupada said, he will fall down. Phalena parichiyate. So we can judge by the results. If you're hearing Krishna Leela, Radha Krishna Leela, and it's just inflaming your desire to indulge in sensuality, and it's making your consciousness more degraded, and leading to your fall down, then stop hearing. But if it's inspiring you to learn more about Krishna, to come closer to Krishna, to serve Radha and Krishna, to chant Hare Krishna, increasing your longing for understanding and entering into those divine pastimes, then go on hearing. Srila Prabhupada gives examples of such unqualified hearers. Not that after hearing Rasa Lila, oh, let me imitate, let me also dance with young girls and enjoy. This is going on. Rascal. Mayavadis, they do that. Perhaps you know. And these people hearing life after life by the sex concentration, making offense to Krishna. Bhuktivadis and Muktivadis do not possess the desire to surrender to Sri Krishna. Subsequently, their hearing of Radha Krishna Lila constitutes an offense. From Srila Prabhupada's instructions, a definition of the careful and serious candidate for Radha Krishna Katha has now evolved. So now he's giving it. Who is qualified? He is at least a strict sadhaka who knows the science of Krishna, has faith in the divinity of Krishna's pastimes, is desirous of total purification, and never imitates Krishna's loving exchanges even in his mind. Being fixed in purpose, such an aspirant will be benefited by hearing Radha Krishna Lila. So I'll read that again. So if you fit in this category, keep listening. So, are you a strict sadhaka who knows the science of Krishna? Do you have faith in the divinity of Krishna's pastimes? Are you desirous of total purification? And do you never ever imitate Krishna's loving exchanges even in your mind? And if that's so, then you'll be benefited by listening to the narration of this book. We now have two versions of Srila Prabhupada's teachings. The first states that only liberated souls possessed of spontaneous attraction should hear Rasa Lila. The second states that qualified devotees still within the modes of nature may hear such pastimes with care. How can these two apparently contradictory instructions be harmonized? My humble submission is as follows. Sensualists with a desire to enjoy matter are forbidden to hear Krishna Lila, while sincere devotees on the path of pure devotion may do so with care. I refer the kind reader to examine the self-evident context of Srila Prabhupada's prohibition. He is not referring to everyone, but to sensualists who immediately think of sense enjoyment upon hearing Krishna Lila. His purport continued. One mundane rogue once said that when the Vaishnavas chant the name Radha Radha, he simply remembers a barber's wife named Radha. It is clear that such rogues who, upon even hearing the name of Radha, are overwhelmed by material desire, should be first purified by regulated devotional practices. When they are serious about attaining the pure platform, they may hear of Radha Krishna Lila carefully, without risk, but then and only then. On the other hand, sincere devotees who are sufficiently qualified as defined above and remain faithfully pure-minded upon hearing Radha Krishna's pastimes, as evinced by the result of their hearing, may continue to hear with care and attention. How to determine whether one is in the eligible category? Sri Krishna is within the devotee's heart, and he reveals whether one is qualified or not. One simply needs to honestly monitor one's thoughts. Balena parichiyate. So we need to monitor our thoughts as we go through this. If a devotee experiences increased material desires upon hearing Radha Krishna Lila, he should recognize this to be a disqualification. Under such circumstances, he should practice sadhana bhakti until the spiritual master advises differently. To further confirm my understanding of Prabhupada's statements, I cite a final piece of evidence. I shall summarize and quote excerpts from a lecture Srila Prabhupada delivered immediately following the performance of Radha Krishna Lila by a Manipuri dance troupe in Mayapur. In this lecture, Srila Prabhupada explained that Radha Krishna Lila can be presented even to the general public. He said, "Introduce these Krishna pastimes all over the world so that they, people in general, may take lesson that the happiness they are seeking is with Krishna." What are the criteria by which this should be done? Prabhupada repeatedly emphasized, understand Krishna in the parampara system, what he is. Do not misunderstand Krishna as an ordinary human being, like one of us. Do not misunderstand Krishna. That should be the precaution. Repeating the same message he spoke in Vrindavan, this time using the word precaution, similar to the terms careful and serious cited earlier, Srila Prabhupada emphasized that a devotee eligible to hear Radha Krishna Lila must clearly understand Krishna to be the supreme transcendental being, who is engaged in supramundane pastimes with his own internal potencies. If such an understanding is fixed, a devotee or even the general public may hear Radha Krishna Lila. His Divine Grace concluded, and if we are fortunate enough to be attracted to Krishna's pastimes, and if we constantly think of them, then our life will be perfect. That is the aim and purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. To summarize, I would like to reiterate the points made above and clarify who should read Paraye Ham. I call the reader's attention to Appendix 6, Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book commentary on this verse. It is the most instructive and supportive of the following conclusion. According to Srila Prabhupada, any devotee serious about progressive advancement in Krishna consciousness, firmly fixed in understanding Krishna Tattva, and feeling no sexual agitation upon reading this book, is qualified to do so. Others should wait for a suitable time and continue practicing the appropriate limbs of devotional service. That is all. For these qualified devotees, I have composed this book. I pray that the Vaishnavas remember me in their prayers. I, like them, hope to become, perhaps at some distant time, the fortunate recipient of prema. So now he's going to give the context. This introduction is actually pretty long. I don't think I'm going to read all of it, but I will read this. The storyline. Dear reader, before you open to chapter 1, I will briefly explain the flow of the narrative. I do so to clarify the storyline you will encounter from the very beginning of the book. Enter Shamalata, a Nitya Siddha Gopi living in Yavat, Radharani's village. She is a Yuteshwari, a leader of many other beautiful gopis, and is much beloved by Sri Krishna. Shamalata is not a member of Radha's group, but she does have a very friendly relationship with Sri Radha and recognizes Radha's exalted position as Govinda's favorite. Shamalata is the narrator. As the book opens, she greets you, the reader, as a visitor, and invites you into the courtyard of her house. There you are introduced to a young girl, Navasaki, a sadhana siddha, who has taken birth in Krishna's earthly pastimes. Navasaki has approached Shamalata to be instructed in the intricacies of prema. By those teachings and by the association with the eternally liberated gopis, Navasaki's love will develop, and she will become a qualified assistant of Krishna's Sakis. At that time, she will become a Manjari in Shamalata's Yuta. Navasaki is in training, and you, the reader, enter on the day she receives her first lesson. To teach Navasaki, Shamalata tells her own story. She narrates the episodes that took place in one day of her life, the day after the Sharadiya Rasayatra. In the drama of the previous night, Krishna had teased and abandoned the gopis before agreeing to dance with them. This prompted Shamalata to question the nature of Sri Krishna's love. On one hand, he appeared very loving, but on the other, he put the gopis through much torment by his dealings. What was the truth of it all? Shamalata considered her friend Radha to be most learned in matters of love. Thus she placed her query before Sri Radha. Radhika did not instruct her directly, but gave Shamalata the assurance that by the blessings of Vrindavan she would understand Sri Krishna's love that very day. Sri Radha's prediction came true. During that day, Shamalata received answers to all her questions. Paraye Ham has two storylines. The minor one consists of Shamalata's train of thought and the day's events that helped stimulate her desire to know more, and which brought her to deeper realizations about prema. The major storyline consists of the lessons themselves, delivered by agents such as her own internal meditation, the discussion among two parrots and other forest creatures, and so on. The lessons on prema are in the form of philosophical teachings, instructive discourses, and illustrative pastimes. They form the main body of each chapter and the primary theme of the book. At the conclusion of the book, Shamalata completes her teachings by describing the rasa dance that took place on the very night her story began, and in which Sri Radha fulfills Shamalata's deepest desires. She then bids farewell to the reader and invites Navasaki to return another day. Thus, the three parts of this book, Prema Samprashna, Premarna Shodhana, and Prema Samputa, are tied together by Shamalata's narrative. So I think I'm going to end there, and we'll pick up at some point. Pick up tomorrow. I'll figure out where, and you'll find out tomorrow. So thank you for joining me, and please come back again. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.